Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is part of our conversation series. I am just one voice in this relationship diversity movement, and it's important to bring more unique perspectives into the conversation. Today, I'll be talking with Dr. Ali Griffith, a TedX speaker and best-selling author. Her 25-year career as a speech pathologist and audiologist has given her such insight on how to cultivate soul-nourishing connections through clear, inviting communication. A little about Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali Griffith is a #1 best-selling author of Launch the Legacy and Business Sales Strategist. Her fiery energy and innate understanding of business and sales strategy has allowed her to lead support teams and share stages with titans such as Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Steve Harvey, and Lisa Nichols. Her innovative approach seamlessly blends business strategy and personal development, allowing clients to maximize their time, talents, and profitability through a 1-2-3 method of simplifying overcomplicated sales processes. An audiologist and speech pathologist by profession, for almost 25 years, Dr. Ali is trained to hear people in order to feel them. As a proud autism mom for Zachary, Dr. Ali knows firsthand the unique mindset hurdles faced by ambitious mothers and caretakers. Whether they're wives, mothers, or career professionals seeking financial and time freedom, Dr. Ali helps women get to the heart of their true purpose in the world and supports them on their profitable journey from barely visible to badass legacy brand owners. Let's get into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation. Today, I have Dr. Ali Griffith with me, and I am so excited to get into this conversation. Welcome, Dr. Ali.
Thanks for having me, Carrie.
I'm so excited for this one because you have over 25 years of experience as an audiologist and a speech pathologist. And when we met before this recording, you talked about how much of an influence your career has had in learning about connective conversations. And so I'd love to hear how you got into this career, what you found interesting, and your journey in learning more about how this linguistics is important in terms of creating these soul-nourishing conversations and communication.
Awesome. So, even though I show up now as, an amazing speaker, I'm standing in stages and talking to many, it all really was based from my beginnings. I was once one of those students who used to get in trouble in the classroom for what? Talking too much. That was me. I was always getting amazing grades, but great student, but she talks a lot. I know many of you out there can relate. So going to college, I wanted to be pre-med. I always wanted to do work with children. So I went to be a pediatrician. I went to Stony Brook University in New York. And during that time, I took a class called The Special Child. In The Special Child, I began to learn about other fields that dealt with children that connected with me more. So
Mm.
I heard about this field called speech language pathology. Being that I was raised in Guyana, which is in South America, I didn't really know much about these other therapeutic spaces. All I knew
Mm.
was be a doctor, be a nurse, or be a
Mm.
lawyer. Like those were
Mm-hmm.
our only options. So hearing about speech language pathology, I said, oh, that's interesting. So that was when it first piqued my interest, working with this special child and how could I help them with communicating.
Mm.
Later, I got a job while I was in college, and I was at a facility with individuals with special needs. And I began to help them with communicating. And I saw the speech language pathologist helping them. And I said, whoa, that is super cool.
Huh.
Someone who cannot use words, how do we connect with them and get them to, how do we connect with them in terms of them not using words and using other aspects of their body to communicate what they needed to say? I was
Yeah.
immediately piqued. So I said, okay, this pediatrician thing may not be for me. I'm really that interested. Let's try this speech language pathology space.
Mm.
Applying for schools, initially I did not get in. It was a very competitive space to get into a speech language pathology program. So then I began to hear about audiology, which was like the science of hearing. Once
Mm.
again, something I did not know about, didn't know it existed,
Mm.
was just really piqued by it, hearing, sound, and then the connective space of hearing and then speaking.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that began my interest in both. I got into the audiology program and later decided to continue my studies, being dual certified with both audiology and speech language pathology. That
Mm.
was when I really began to incorporate both the aspects of speaking and the aspect of listening. And
So important in communication, right?
yes,
Those two aspects. Oh, wow. Because I think a lot of times we think communication is just me telling someone, how I feel or expressing, but it is so important to have that other side of it, which is listening.
yes, yes, and nonverbal cues.
Mm.
So that began really the space of what was not being said, which is the
Mm.
majority of language is really interpreting nonverbal language.
Mm.
So that was the excitement that led me into the connective space of language.
Wow. Wow. So, in all of your 25 years, what have you found is a hang up when it comes to communication? Where do people get stuck and how can, we help them move through those sticky moments?
I think people get stuck with either not being able to find the right words to communicate how they feel. So that if
Mhm.
they're not able to communicate how they're feeling using the right words, like not being able to place exactly the words that they want to come out, and they'll say, that didn't sound right. Like that's not what I really meant. And there
Mhm.
could be a break in communication in that aspect. You may say one word and use a different intonation, and you
Yeah.
completely mean something different. So there's always
Tone.
that break in, it's
Mm.
not what I meant. Well,
Mm.
that's what it sounded like to me. And that's where I find a lot of breakdowns happen in communication.
That's an amazing point, and I find that sometimes when I get triggered and I'm in a space where I can communicate pretty well when I'm, totally fine and everything is good and I'm just communicating with someone who I am. But when I get triggered, which happens in intimate relationships, the words just don't come out the way that I want. And I actually feel a confusion in my head sometimes of like, I don't know how to express what's going on. So, how can you help other people that might feel that way in those moments where it gets very emotional to be able to communicate more clearly with the person, they're talking to?
I think, like I tell many of my clients, using that moment to say, I can't communicate exactly what I'm trying to say right now. Give me
Mm,
a second.
mm,
Right, like saying that I'm upset right now. I want to be able to say something, but it's not coming out. I need a few minutes, and pauses are
mm.
perfect for that.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. You're so right on with that because when I have it in my mind, I'm like, I need to take a break,
Mhm.
a moment to just collect my thoughts. I really am able to kind of breathe and be more clear.
Yes.
Um, And so, wow. Okay. So once that pause happens, then what would you help people do after that?
So you're now asking yourself, like you said, you have a lot of clouded thoughts at the
Mm-hmm.
moment. You're angry, so it's dealing with emotions and the right words to say. So slowing it down, taking a pause, definitely taking a few, like 3 to 5 deep breaths. As you do that, your brain begins to slow down the process
Mm.
because now you're giving your brain more oxygen. You're getting a little bit more clear. So now at that time, you're going to ask yourself, what do I need this person to understand? Not
Mm.
what I'm trying to say, but what do I want them to understand? Sometimes I
Mm.
think we get so clouded with, I need to say this, I need to say this, I need to say that. And you can say all the things, but you miss the main part is what do you want them to receive?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can
Y-
say all the words, and if they don't receive it, there's a break in communication again.
yeah, and I love that. And I want to go back to the one thing that you said at the beginning of that moment of like, I'm not communicating clearly is kind of saying it like it is. Like, this is what's going on, not trying to get through it, but really being honest and vulnerable almost. I think it's vulnerable to say, I feel like I'm not able to communicate or I'm not clear about what I want to say in this moment. So
Mhm.
it's important for me to step away. And that kind of vulnerability, I think, is important also to create some kind of, soul connection with someone.
Absolutely. Because at that time, they begin to honor you more for the
Mhm.
fact that you're asking them, as opposed to some people may just walk away and not say anything. And that's even more frustrating because now the person is feeling neglected or they're feeling like you abandoned them in the process of a discourse or of a conversation or probably a very intimate conversation. So giving yourself permission to say, hey, I need a few minutes. Let me just get my thoughts together. We can reconvene in another, just give me a few minutes. It lets them
Yeah.
say, okay, I'm not being put off. My feelings are still being respected.
Mhm.
And we can do this when we're a little bit more either calmer or just at a space where I can find better words to communicate what I'm trying to say.
Yes. And the other thing that I love about saying that is it leaves less for the other person to make up, through their own filters of like, oh,
Absolutely.
she's saying it this way or she's not talking to me and I don't know why. And it must be because of this, which is usually when I make up those assumptions of people, or of something like I'm wrong, right? I'm putting it all through the filter of my past experiences. And so I guess that leads me to a question about the nonverbal communication, because sometimes I think nonverbal communication can get misinterpreted. So how do we decipher what we're making up from, the assumptions about their nonverbal communication and actual accurate nonverbal, communication interpretation?
Ask. Everything I'm going to be, it's very direct, like ask them. So,
Hmm.
when you usually see a person with their arms crossed, that they're pretty much close to the conversation, or, in that you're interpreting based on your past experiences when you've seen someone hands crossed, what it may
Yeah.
mean, right? However, at that moment, you have two choices. You could either go on based on your past experiences and allow them grace because they're also allowed to feel how they feel at that moment. And it may not be you, it may be
Mm.
just how they're feeling about either the situation or something else that may have happened throughout that day. The second thing I would do is, hey, are you still open to the conversation? Is it
Mm.
something that you're still open about? And what I like to do is I like to model, right?
Mm.
So I do this when I used to work with children. I still do this with my clients when I'm having sales conversations. Sometimes people are very closed off when you're having these conversations. So I'll just open up myself and just do it in front of them. And what we
Mm.
do inadvertently, people begin to realize that they're cross and they open up sometimes, or they'll hold their stature. And I'm like, okay, no, they're really setting this. So I'm like, well, are you open to this conversation? So literally
Mm.
taking my hands and opening it up from over here, from being closed up to being open. And then I get to hear with their words what they're saying, if they are or if they aren't. Now, if we have the one word they're saying yes, but their body language is saying no, we just have to trust them on that and just move forward because you don't want to spend all your time thinking, well, I know their words are saying this, but their body is saying that, and that could
Uh-huh.
just send you into a spiral. Respect it. Okay, great. Your body language is showing me something a little different, but I'm just going to allow that grace and let's move forward. Sometimes
Mm.
it's helping people to be cognizant of it because sometimes you are not really conscious. Like How many times have you heard someone telling you like you have that resting resting bee face, right? Like you have a face that is saying something and you're like, really? I didn't even know that. Like you look upset. Really? I didn't know that. So sometimes you have things, we may have things and people may bring it to our awareness and then it will help us to be more conscious of it.
Yeah, I've said many times to my husband, who is so supportive and listens to this podcast, so I know you're listening, honey, that I wish we could record our conversations because, especially those really challenging conversations, because there's some things that he reflects back to me that I'm like, I don't remember saying it in that way. And I kind of want for my own study of myself, right, to record it the audio and the video. I want to see what I appear because I think that that is true a lot of times is we don't know how we come off. We have a certain perception of how we show ourselves to others and how we communicate. And it can be very enlightening to
Absolutely.
listen.
And it's great when you're having a conversation with someone you trust. So, like, you trust hubby, you're understanding he's going to tell you something of what his interpretation of what you did. So, a lot of it is really based on interpretation, also. So, if this is what he interpreted, remember, initially, it's not to be right, what you said or what you didn't say, it's what did the other person understand about what you did. So if
That's
they're
why I love
understanding
that.
this is,
That's why I love what you were saying about asking questions. Asking questions. I am really learning this, specifically in my other relationship, like, because he's always asking me questions. I just want to be sure that I understand how you're feeling and what you're saying, because I'm interpreting it this, and it's usually through his past experiences that he's interpreting it. And I've learned so much from that about asking questions. This is how I took it, and I want to make sure that I got it how you meant it. And I think that what I found with that way of going into communication is it's an opening, it's an invitation. And I think that many times in conversations, and tell me how you experience this, was like, I'm put on the defensive, right? If it's like, oh, I'm wrong. Especially the words like, you did this to me, you made me feel this way, puts me on the defensive instead of like, I feel this and I'm wanting to express that I feel this from what's going on. It's more of an invitation.
Absolutely. Words can really make or break a conversation. I've had clients call me actually and said to me, I need to say something. Help me find words to say this. Because they know sometimes it's coming from anger. Sometimes it's like I'm getting ready to quit my job. I'm getting ready to tell my husband something. And for some reason, I guess based on my past, they'll say, Dr. Ali, help me to figure out the words to say this because I know it's also flooded with emotion. So a lot of times I tell them, oh, first, take a break, step out of the situation. Let's give ourselves 24 hours and then we'll come back in and I'll look at whatever you wrote or you want to say. And now we can say it from more an open place. It also gives us to cool down a little bit if it's coming from anger. And then we try and find the words that tries not to insinuate something. So words are so delicate that can be used and it misconstrue exactly what you're trying to say based on the other person's interpretation. So I like to use a lot of neutral language so that there's at least less up to interpretation.
Yeah. So can you go into more specifics about the neutral language and what those words
Yeah. So it's almost like what you were saying, where you make me feel, taking out the people out of the situation. Like this was the situation. You made me feel angry today. The anger was around me. Like I would say something that takes the other person out of blame and either own my part in it or today I was angry, like owning my part. So now there's nothing anyone can tell me whether I'm angry or not angry. I'm letting you know I was angry as opposed to I was angry because I felt like, and you just speak on yourself. So on neutral for me, it's me. When instead of saying, well, you made me do this and you did that, takes that other person because that person automatically goes into defensive language mode.
Definitely. And so just so that I ground this into my space, it's more speaking about what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, not the other person was responsible for how I'm feeling. It's
Yes,
I'm
yes.
feeling this, and that can't be made wrong, right? Because I have
Mhm.
my own feelings. My kids say this to me all the time. It's like, Mom, you're not me. You don't know how I feel. It's like, yep, you're absolutely right. I'm not in your body. I don't know how you feel. And so honoring, so like that's the expression side, right? When you're on
Mhm.
the listening side and someone is saying that to you, can you give some tips about how to receive that kind of communication and how to listen from a space of openness and invitation?
Well, that's you hit it right at the end. Like
Mm,
really, and I do this a lot with my clients. Are you in a state of receptivity? Are you ready to
mm,
receive? Because sometimes we're really not ready to receive in a conversation. We have a lot of
mhm,
things going on in our head. We're busy with chatter. We may have many things that we're doing at that time, and we're really not at a space to hear, fully receive what the other person is saying. So check
mm,
yourself in a conversation. It's not only as the speaker, are you also ready or in a position to listen with an open mind, open heart, and open soul?
mm,
And if you're not, be aware, like be more aware of yourself. It's really a lot of self work that we're doing, self work in terms of, am I at a space where I can communicate how I feel without blaming someone else? Or am I in the
mhm.
place with listening without misinterpreting someone based on how I feel? Like check myself. Am I in a mood? Am I feeling funky? Because if I'm funky, I'm gonna listen with funky ears. I'm gonna think
Yeah.
that even if you tell me the sky is blue, I'm like, well, it's not really blue. It's really light blue with accents of white, you know? So it's like, wait a minute. I'll go back and say, okay, Allie, check yourself. Did I really have to say all of that? Like, yes, it is blue.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that it goes kind of both ways in terms of specifically, well, there are things that come up and you're not expecting them to come up, right? So
Yeah.
there's those moments, but I'm not talking about that necessarily. When someone has something like, let's say I have something that I want to communicate to my partner, it's really helpful to know when he is most receptive and how he is most receptive. Like my
That's
husband
good.
is not so receptive in the morning. It takes him a while to wake up, and he likes to have his morning where he just kind of gets his mind together. That I've learned over 17 years is not the time to talk
Yes.
to him. And at the same time, I also think, and and I struggle with this sometimes. I'm learning, but to ask, I want to talk to you about something. When would be the best time? Because I have been
Mhm.
known to bring up things at the wrong time and I'm learning,
Yeah.
but to really ask that question is I have something I want to talk about. When would be the best time? And it gives the other person the space, I think, in the invitation to say, well, I'm finishing this right now. So let me just have 5 minutes and then I'll come to you. Or, you know what, I just got to get through this project and maybe tonight we can have some time to talk. Um, so
Absolutely.
that
My mom
invitation and
used to
knowing
laugh at
them.
me.
What'd you say?
Yeah. My mom used to laugh at me. She said when I was younger, I was the child. As soon as she got in from work, I want to ask her 50 million questions. As soon as she got in from work, she was like, you had the worst timing. So I would get in trouble a lot because she'd just be frustrated and she may lash out her day and just whatever she says back to me may not have been, of the nicest nature. So it made me really conscious from a younger age, like, okay, let me give her a few minutes when she comes in. She's not ready yet. And then kind of
Yeah.
be more cognizant of those.
I have
Awareness
a
is key.
teenager like that. And it's so funny because he has I think some people process through talk and through words, and he is one
Mhm.
of them. He's been talking ever since words came out of his mouth, been talking pretty much nonstop, and I think that's a great point as a parent, for any of those parents out there listening, that it is okay to say, give me, 5 to 10 minutes to come home and process my day. And even with him, I say, at the end of the night, because he processes as he like speaks as he falls asleep. And I'm just like, okay, we're done talking right now because I process through quiet. So I process just through kind of going inward. So I think that that's another important thing to understand about your partner or someone that you're intimate with or any relationship is how do they best process? Um, Yeah. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Everyone processes differently. I'm also a quiet processor. I really need the time to really just process things in my head. My son, he also goes within. But when he has really important things that he must get out, it comes out whether he likes it or not. He's on the autism spectrum. So he, at that time, it's like, I have to say something, I'm going to say it. And so I've learned to just navigate him and letting him know, hey, can I get about 10-15 minutes and then we can talk about this? Is this really, really important? If so, let's see how I can modify myself also. I've done that.
Right.
Because sometimes he's like, no, this is really like, and it's almost during interviews. Me teaching a class, a virtual class, it'll be like, Mom, it's really, really important. And at that time, I will tell the interviewer person, like, okay, can I get 1 minute? My son needs to tell me something, or if I'm
Yeah.
teaching classes, to take a pause from that, because sometimes there's urgency. And when there's urgency, I try to, respect that also. But
Yeah, I
not
do.
every he start to learn when it's urgency and when it's not urgency. He'll go, okay, okay, no, I can wait for 5 minutes. I can wait until you're finished. I'm like, okay, great.
I think there is a compromise aspect to all communication, and to know when it's important to say, no, I need actually to talk to you right now. And, to call that in when it's really necessary. And so I guess, as we're starting to wrap up, communication is never anything that we're taught. I think we are modeled it many times dysfunctionally from our environment as we're growing up. And these conversations are so important because I really do believe communication and how to communicate effectively, respectfully, and in a way that is inviting should be a course taught starting in kindergarten, because it is really, I think, the most important skill. Everything revolves around communication, is our connection. And, we talk mostly about intimate relationships in the podcast, but is it going to be soul nourishing with the things that we talked about here today? Or is it going to be something that's going to be abusive, toxic, and just make us feel really not good in our relationship, because it can contribute or it can detract from our relationship? And so to me, it's about doing our own inner work, right? We connected on that, doing our own inner work, knowing ourselves, being an observer of our surroundings, of our partners, and even not only taking our observations, but actually having the conversation with our partner from an early time in our relationship. No time is too late, I think, or too early, but
Absolutely.
saying, like, I want to be the best communicator. So let's talk about how we receive information, what we need from each other, what is important to us, and actually have those direct conversations.
Absolutely. I agree. I also think that each person, like we said earlier, have their own unique communication style. So it's very important to know earlier in the relationship, well, what is their communication style and what's mine? And what may
Mm-hmm.
be mine with one relationship may not be the same with another relationship. So let's understand, let's communicate what it is right now between you and I, and then what will we like it to be? What can we create for us? Because it's going to be unique from every relationship I've had before. And then you get to create this new space that's going to be amazing and increase your connectivity.
And that brings in the purpose of this podcast, that every relationship is as unique as you are, and that you
Yes.
design it through having those direct conversations with the unique person you're with.
Ding, ding, ding.
What better way to end? Oh, Dr. Ali, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been enlightening and helpful for me, and I know those that are listening. How can we get in touch with you if someone wants to reach out to you? What's the best way for them to connect?
Absolutely. At Dr. Ali Griffith across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest. There are different matters of how I show up, whether it's in business, whether it's in communication, whether it's in parenting. Once you go to at Dr. Ali Griffith, you'll probably see it in the show notes. You'll
Yep.
find me. And I also have a podcast show, the Dr. Ali Griffith Show. We're in the process of rebranding it for the year. So stay tuned and just stay connected.
Yes, yes. Everyone go follow her, please. She is such a beautiful soul. And I'll have all of the connections, all of the links in the show notes. Again, Dr. Ali, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, carriejaroslow.com, Instagram, or TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Are you feeling stuck or unfulfilled in your intimate relationships? Do all your relationships end in the same way? Do you feel like you've lost the spark in your current relationship? Can you never even find one person who you want to explore a relationship with? If you answered yes to any of those questions, are sick and tired of feeling like a failure in your relationships, and desperately desire a different experience, then my 8-week deep reprogramming intensive may be the answer for you. In this program, I work individually with you for 8 transformative weeks. We'll identify the subconscious programming that's keeping you stuck and shift it to a new affirming belief system. We go deep, we get real, we get results. This is healing unlike anything you've ever experienced before. Jordan from Charlotte, North Carolina said, "More has shifted in 8 weeks of working with Carrie than 10 years of psychotherapy." Jane from Sanford, North Carolina said, "It's honestly changed my life." And Cassie from Santa Barbara, California said, "Carrie's laser precision in helping me diagnose where the stuck energy was helped me make positive movement in our first session alone. Absolutely transformational." I love being a guide and witness to these courageous people who claim that they were done with their past experiences and ready for something different. I'm opening a limited number of spots for 2023 and would love to help you permanently transform your relationship experience. To set up a free 30-minute clarity call where I can help you uncover your number one block to fulfilling relationships, connect with me through the link in the show notes. You are worthy of experiencing deep fulfillment and love in your relationships. This intensive work will help you get there.